And welcome to yet another episode of Wellness Wheel Wednesday. Today I have with me Patty Lou Cumby from Cumby Insurance. And she is an insurance broker. And I just love when hearing Patty speak. Like, I've heard her multiple times at various events. And it always really scares the bejesus out of me when she speaks in terms of whether I have enough coverage. So even sitting in the chair listening to that, I sometimes can feel the stress of wondering whether I have enough car insurance or the right car insurance, whether I have the right business liability for the little business that I operate. So if you have ever wondered, you should listen to Patty speak. So why am I speaking with an insurance broker in the first place? It has a lot to do with that preventing emotional stresses. So when people come to me with back pains, they often think that the back pain is something physical that they've done, like they sat wrong, slept wrong, bent wrong, and that's certainly part of it, but it's not always the case. There are other variables that can contribute to back pain. Sometimes it's a chemical issue, maybe their diet is poor, maybe they're smoking or drinking that's contributing to the inability to really heal from an injury. But also, and maybe more often than not, is emotional issues. So if we have a very high stress event that may have happened to us, like we're going through a divorce or trouble with aging parents or death, financial discourse, wherever that emotional stress is coming from, it can really trip a stress response. And that stress response can create all sorts of problems for the body, but it includes back pain. So that's why Wellness Wheel Wednesday is here to help us navigate through some of this stress so we can take the proactive steps of reducing some emotional stress or future emotional stresses. So that's why we're talking today with Patty. So Patty, I am sure, I know that you have several stories that really highlight some stress that people have gone through with some claims that you've processed. So tell me one of your favorite stories.
Sure. Thank you for having me here today. And one of my common stories that I do tell people is about liability issues. So right now in our industry, it's very common to have 2 million liability or higher.
Is this for auto or for?
Actually for everything.
For everything.
So
okay.
This would be for auto, for home insurance, for commercial insurance. Mm-hmm. On the commercial side, we're starting to see 5 million now as being, more common. Okay. But for sure, you want to check your documents on everything that you have insured, and you do not want to see 1 million liability on there. It is not enough. So just for an example, everybody's driving a car to work usually. Even for the stay-at-home moms out there, you're still going to have a car that you're driving around to do your errands. And so if you were to get into an at-fault accident right now in Alberta, this probably would be true for all across Canada and even down into some of the states. If someone is paralyzed in the other vehicle, mm-hmm. then you're looking at over $1 million payout. And a lot of lawyers that I talk to will say that those payouts can start at 1.2 million and up. So if you are the unlucky person that have not been talking to your broker and this claim occurs and it happens to you, your policy will max out at 1 million, and then they're coming after you personally for the other remainder of that payout. And unfortunately in our age group, because we have houses and we have savings, lawyers will say if you have equity, if you have money, if you have the potential even to earn income, then they tend to come after you harder than if you were a 16-year-old kid that got into an accident and you really don't have a lot of money right now, right?
Yeah.
So all of these things can be prevented by, talking to your broker, because to go from 1 million to 2 million liability is not a very big price point. Yeah. Sometimes it could be as low as, $30 a year, $50 a year. Yeah. For commercial insurance, it could be a couple of $100 a year, but it is not worth it to be taking the chance on having too low of a liability limit.
Right. Wow. That is, you just wouldn't ever know.
No, if you're not in the insurance industry, 100% right, you would never know. Yeah.
Do you have a story that, like one checkbox wasn't checked off and this caused somebody some, like, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
That they didn't have X checked when they should have, and that check mark on the X would have prevented a whole whack of problems.
Yes. So there was a house fire last year in the Edmonton area, and we do have that company in our office. So I was talking to some of the claims people, and they were sharing this particular story with me. So the house had vinyl siding, and the gentleman had a new barbecue. So he turned it on to get that funny smell to go away, but he forgot that he had the barbecue on, so he went to bed.
Oh no.
And so the vinyl siding on his house actually melted while he was sleeping, and his house caught on fire.
Oh no.
So then the two houses on either side also caught on fire, because if you don't know, vinyl siding is very flammable, and if you talk to anyone from the fire department, they don't particularly love vinyl siding because it's so quick to spread.
Yeah.
And so then two other houses on the outside again started to burn. These were partial losses. The two beside him were full losses, and his was a total loss.
Yeah.
So unfortunately for him, he only had $1 million liability on his house.
Yeah.
So now all these people are going to come back and want to sue his insurance policy to cover, you know, what was happening with their houses.
Yeah.
And so he definitely would not have had enough coverage.
Yeah.
So for the sake of, let's say, $20 or $30 a year to increase from that $1 million liability up to the $2 million liability, he now would have such a stressful life event that will continue on and on, you know, for at least several years, where he's going to be getting sued.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's a real tragedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what kind of bothers me as an insurance broker is a lot of the claims that I see that happen. I don't know why, but maybe now we've gained a bit of a reputation for helping people, so we do get people referred to us that are in the midst of a bad claim or maybe have had a bad experience. Almost everything that I see is 100% preventable if the broker would have been giving good advice.
Right. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So that is, see, and these are very stressful stories, and this poor gentleman, it's not really his fault. It's, well, it is his fault, but it's not.
But you know, you wouldn't know is the problem if you're not in the insurance industry.
Yeah.
And unfortunately in our industry, the onus always goes back to the client.
Yeah. Yeah.
Almost always, that's what I see.
Yeah.
And it's very unfair, in my opinion, to the client, because if you're not in the insurance industry, there's no way for you to know these things.
Right. So then what is your sage advice to people listening to this?
I would say for you to find an insurance person that has experience. So you don't want someone that's necessarily newly licensed working on your file, because they simply just wouldn't have the experience to have seen some of these things.
Right.
And so you want to be talking to someone that will actually take the time to explain things to you. Another point that you could look into is in our office, different claims that we've seen now over the years outside of our office that have happened, but when I hear about them, if that is not specifically a question that is on our quote sheet, we will go in and alter the quote sheet and ask it.
Yeah.
Because there are different, I will say, common stories that tend to pop up.
Yeah.
And so we make sure that we are covering off all of those issues.
Right.
But a lot of brokers, from what I'm hearing from other clients, they don't take the time to explain.
Yeah.
And so you really need to be feeling that someone's really taking that time to go through your policy properly.
Right. So can someone switch insurance? The insurance can only be changed at the insurance date? Like the
no,
birthday?
you can actually change midterm.
Yeah.
What we always tell people is, say if you had the exact same coverages with your current insurance company and you want it to switch to us, I would then suggest that you wait till renewal if the pricing was very similar and everything was identical, because I don't want you having to pay a small cancellation fee.
Yeah.
But most of the times we don't see that case at all.
Yeah.
Either we can come in with better pricing, but most times we're coming in with better coverage, or a combination of the two.
Right.
And so I would never tell you to stay with that company until renewal if you do not have proper coverage, because then if something happens, it's not worth it.
Okay, so then the cancellation applies when but it wouldn't apply on renewal.
Exactly.
Okay, I see. Okay.
We always tell the client to do what's best for them.
Right.
Because in my opinion, that's how we always treat people how we would want to be
Right.
treated.
That's the nice thing, right? Why would you burn money if you didn't have to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So, very helpful. Thank you, Patty, for
Thank you
coming
very
in
much.
to chat with us. It's always just shiver me timbers when I when I hear stories like this, and it just makes me want to make sure that all my insurance is up to date. And it's like a multivitamin. It's just something that you do in order to make sure that you avoid as best as possible future stresses. So it's a good. So if you don't, or if you're unsure of your insurance, you should give Patty Lou a shout. So next week on Wellness Wheel Wednesday, we have Teresa Stanley. She's going to be talking to us, joining us for an interview. So stay tuned for that. And thanks everybody for listening.
Thanks again.
Bye.
Take care.